What is going on, my beautiful LARPers and LARPettes? Today we're going to go over the brand new Sig Sauer P320 AXG Legion. Now that is a mouthful, and I'm probably going to just stick with calling this the AXG Legion from this point on. Full disclosure, like always, guys, what is my relationship with Sig Sauer? They do send me guns in for review. They have sent me a Sig MCX Spear, this Sig here, like one or two more that I forgot about. But anyways, they do not give them to me for free. They do send them in to me just to do the review and for me to send them back after a certain amount of time, and I have the choice of purchasing the guns from Sig. But anyways, yeah, this one they did send to me on loan basically, and all the other SIGs that I'm going to mention here, like this Legion or this Elite or these other Legions here, I did pay for, but not this 320 here. So just wanted to get that out of the way. And quick shout out to my sponsor Atlantic Firearms for supporting this YouTube channel. They are great people over there. I buy a lot of guns from them. They are giving me discounts on certain guns, and they are going to start sending me some guns to borrow and do reviews for you guys. So if you see anything on Atlantic Firearms website, go ahead and let me know, and I'll ask them to see if I could borrow that for review. But yeah, Atlantic Firearms, thank you so much for supporting the channel and supporting my YouTube endeavors. So starting off, guys, you get 3 21 round magazines in the box, and I'll grab the box right now. Now, what are you getting in the box when you first purchase one of these? Is basically just a hard-sided case, and you do get your manual there and some stickers, some swag, and your Legion card, which is very important for your Legionnaires out there. Is that what you guys are called? Legion, the Legion squad? I don't know. I'm not really a part of it, even though I own a couple of Legions. I haven't really submitted the whole Legion thing, which I probably should. So basically what you're supposed to do is submit this paperwork and send it in, and you'll get access to all of their Legion products and swag, and you get like this nice case and coin and all that good stuff, right? So let's get right into the firearm itself. Starting with the slide, this is a 4.7 inch slide, and if you're looking at the barrel is shorter than the slide, and I'll get right into that in a moment. But at the front of the barrel, it is tapered off or has those nice angled cuts that make it a little bit smaller at the front end. It looks really clean because on the dust cover here, it does have slight angled cuts at the end of it as well to make it blend in with that top slide. Now with this AXG Legion here, you do have this 2-port compensator that's integrated into this Legion slide, and that works exactly how the X Macro works. So when they released the X Macro, I was a little bit skeptical on that whole 2-port slide compensator thing, just because I didn't really know how well it would work. But when I was actually out shooting it, it does a hell of a job keeping that muzzle rise or muzzle flip or recoil down, whatever you want to call it. It does help mitigate that recoil a fair amount. And I'll show you guys a quick side-by-side right now with this X-5 Legion and this 226 Legion that I have here in front of me. Out of the whole lineup of SIGs that I've owned, the 320s and the 226s and all those, the X-5 Legion was my softer or smoother or
less flippy
SIG out of my collection. But when I got one of these in my hands, this is definitely the softer shooting out of my whole lineup thus far. So when it comes to that 2-port compensator, it definitely does work. I love it in this X Macro, and I'm glad they kind of went with this design for this new Legion series. Now, one of the main things that I'm concerned about with that 2-port compensator that's built into the slide is the fact that since the barrel is shorter than the compensator, and if you're looking at it here, I can show you maybe a close-up, you have that chamber at the front of the barrel, which tends to get a little bit hot when you're trying to shoot for a long period of time, which isn't going to be a huge deal. I just wanted to point that out, that it does get a tad bit hot compared to something that's just like this X-5 here, where you have no compensator. Those gases that are getting shot up out of there are definitely heating up the front end of that barrel. But the other concern that I have was the fact that since this is a open chamber here and the barrel is constantly sliding through that, If I get enough carbon buildup on the front of that, I'm wondering if it will cause some drag if I never clean this thing. I don't know. I haven't got to that point yet. It'd probably take thousands of rounds to get to the point where it builds up a lot of carbon. But if SIG is doing this, then they obviously probably know how many rounds they can do, and they probably wouldn't release it to the public without knowing that that would cause some issues. I hope. But other than that, I'm loving that design so far in terms of performance wise. And if you're also looking at the barrel, this barrel is a 3.9 inch barrel. I don't know if I mentioned that, but the slide is 4.7, the barrel is 3.9 inches. Also, you do have this full length guide rod. That's the length of the slide. I really like that they're doing the full length guide rod. And I was curious to see if I can put a longer barrel if I didn't want to utilize those ports, or if I was going to go shoot this in competition. And again, I'm not really the expert in competition. I'm just trying to give you guys info from what I know about competition. And I do know from the last time I went and competed, compensator on your gun automatically puts you in open class, open division. I was wondering, maybe if I didn't want to shoot open division, I should just put a longer barrel in here so that way I don't have to utilize those ports and it's just acting like a slide with lightning cuts on there. But when I tried to do that, it did not fit any other barrel other than this 3.9 inch. So just letting you know that you can't swap barrels to a longer barrel on this one, because if you're looking at the inside of the ports, it is smaller diameter. It looks like they added a lot more material around that front end where those ports are. And it kind of makes sense, right? So if you're gonna have a lot of gases, especially if you're gonna be shooting like plus P or something like that, it's gonna cause a lot of stress on the front end of that. And you don't want a thinner, weaker portion on the front there when you have a lot of those gases escaping from there and constantly smashing against the walls of that muzzle end there. So I'm glad they are keeping that thicker at the end. I was a little bummed out that I can't put other barrels in there, but it kind of makes sense to keep that port going there. And the other benefit to having a compensator built into the slide is the fact that you don't have to worry about that compensator threading off. Also, another fun thing that I usually like to do is swapping parts around that are able to be swapped. What I did was put this AXG Legion slide onto this X-five Legion frame to see if that compensator actually does do its job. So as you saw there, it was definitely a flat shooting gun on that frame as well. So enough about the compensator, guys. You do have night sights on this Legion, and you also have night sights on the 226 Legion, and they are exactly the same as all the other Legions other than this like X-five Legion, right? So on this Legion, you do have a front bright green sight, and when it's nighttime, they all glow in the dark, all three of those dots. Now moving back on the slide, you do have front serrations that are very aggressive. I can definitely get a good grip on that whenever I'm doing press checks, or I'm gonna rack it from the front just like that. And if you're moving back on the rear of the slide, the serrations on the rear aren't as pronounced as the front serrations. So I just wanna mention that. They are aggressive enough that I can get a good grip on them, but they're just not as deeply cut as the front end of that gun. Also on the top of that slide, you do get your Legion logo. Now, if I didn't already mention, this 3.9 inch barrel is chambered in 9mm. I always forget to mention the caliber that I'm shooting. Now moving on to the optic cut, you can basically slap on any optic you want there as long as you get the plate that corresponds with the optic and just slap on there. And I love that they are going with this style of cut, because I do not like when they cut it this way where the rear sight is integrated into the plate, and when you do take that plate off, you basically lose your rear sight unless you get an optic that has a rear sight built in, or a plate and all that stuff. So loving the fact that they're doing it this way and I'm able to retain my sights. Now the controls are basically identical to all the other SIGs, well, the 320s. You do have your takedown lever here and your ambidextrous slide stop, slide release. That's literally the same thing on this X-five Legion. Now moving on to the front end of the frame here, you do have a 1913 style accessory rail or light rail, whatever you want to call it. Dust cover is what I usually call it. And I went ahead and slapped on this Surefire X300 because I think the Surefire X300 looks really clean on a lot of guns. And I really like the performance that I'm getting out of the X300s. But anyways, that's how it looks with an X300 on it. You could put basically any light you want on here. And this X300 Legion combo works perfectly fine with my Alien Gear Rapid Force Level 3 holster, for those of you that are going to ask what holster that is. What I do wish though is that they would make this dust cover a little bit longer. I know this is just a AXG frame and they're basically all cut the same length, but I do want a full length dust cover on an AXG frame. I think that would really set it off and make it look super clean. I love the way this X-five Legion looks just because of that dust cover. I'm not really a huge fan of that whole portion cut off the front of that dust cover. And that's just my opinion, guys. That really has nothing to do performance-wise, or it might have something to do performance-wise. Well, maybe I should just cut myself off there because I feel like the extra added material might help reduce that recoil, but it's not a huge deal. But that's just my opinion, guys. I like the fact that I can have a full dust cover on a gun just for aesthetic purposes. Now moving on back to the trigger guard, guys. On the front end of that trigger guard, you do have some checkering. That is if you're gonna basically put your finger over just like that to give yourself a little bit of extra leverage when you're shooting, or if you're like Lena Mitchell, you put 2 fingers on the front of that. My fingers are kind of fat to do that, but yeah, you can go ahead and put 1 finger on the front of that and you won't lose your grip. You'll have no slippage there. And you do have the same exact checkering on the front of that grip there. On this side, you do have a textured mag release. Now this mag release is a little bit different than your average P320, right? On the P320s with the polymer frames, you do have this triangular shape mag release, like on this 365, this 320, or all the other ones. This is more reminiscent of the like 226s. It's a complete circle, but on the 226 is more like an oval shape. Now the grips are extremely nice. These are G10 grips and they have your beautiful Legion logo there, and you do have a G10 spine on the back of that grip there. I'm loving that color as well, how it blends in, and it looks extremely nice when it's combined with this Legion gray, I believe is what they call when they're doing their Cerakote on their Legion series of guns. But on this Legion is gray, on that 229 that I'm going to pull up here. Let me show you guys this 229. That's a 229 Legion gray, and on this Legion gray. Now down to the magwell, this is a metal magwell and it is extremely easy to do reloads with. I loved the reload feeling on that. I did not mess up a ton. I still mess up, but I didn't mess up as much as I would if I had a gun like this Legion here, which doesn't have a magwell. I already messed up a little bit there. The X-five Legion is wider and bigger than the AXG Legion. Now the trigger is something that I haven't really, I'm trying to wrap my brain around these triggers, right? So they're not bad triggers, they're just not the extremely best trigger in terms of having a competition style gun, right? Like on this X-five, this is their competition version. So the trigger, it's just a little too spongy for my taste, if that makes sense. So yeah, just that little bit of sponginess kind of like gets me to like, I wish it was just a little bit better. But just to bring up triggers on this 226 Legion, this trigger is phenomenal. And if you're a fan of the Legion series of guns, the trigger is what basically set it apart from all the other SIGs, right? So on this 226 Legion, I believe they come with the SRT triggers, I believe, the short reset triggers. Yeah, I think that's what that's called on there. But this short reset trigger is extremely nice in my opinion. It's very smooth, very crisp. That's in single action, and the double action is a nice smooth pull all the way to the rear. That goes for the 229 as well. Very crisp, very predictable, and a smooth double action pull. I could definitely feel the difference between the Legion series triggers and like a standard 226 or like this Elite here. It doesn't feel like it's as polished or tuned as the SRT trigger in the 226. Yeah, that's
beautiful.
So when it comes to the Legion line of triggers, I have a high expectation for their triggers. When it comes to the ones on the 320s, it's definitely better than a stock trigger on like a 320, but it's not as good as the 226 Legion, especially the single action Legion. Those are phenomenal triggers as well. But that probably has a lot to do with the fact that it's a striker firearm basically, so they might not be able to get it tuned to that spec just yet. But I do see some aftermarket triggers that are a little bit shorter and a little bit different angle. Maybe if they made the angle flatter instead of that angle this way, right? So maybe if they made it as a flat straight, just like here, took a lot of that slack out and stuff like that. Who knows? Again, I'm just nitpicky, guys. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're not. Who really gives a shit? It's a trigger, and if you know how to shoot the gun, you know how to shoot the gun. Now lastly, guys, another big change on the 320 Legion series of handguns is the fact that they are now using this AXG frame, or the metal frame. For those of you that don't know what the AXG is, it is basically a full metal frame. I just want to point something out that is kind of funny, I guess, in my eyes, is the fact that they started like with metal guns, right? So this is a metal gun, hammer fire, double action, double single action. Then they went to a polymer gun. I don't have a normal 320 here, but they went to a polymer version, and people were like, let's make it a little bit heavier, right? Let's make a heavier polymer version of a 320. So then they went to the X-five Legion, which they have a tungsten infused polymer frame, which is definitely heavier. And the reason why they did that is to help mitigate that recoil with the weight of the frame. And then they went to metal again. So it's kind of like it went through this cycle of life, or this circle of life. Metal, plastic, heavier plastic, then back to metal, which I guess options, right? On the AXG Legion, I do love the fact that it's all metal, but if you're looking at it compared to the 226 Legion, it's almost like they look identical, and one of them is just a hammer fired and the other one is striker fired. It is kind of cool that they basically kept that same design and didn't completely revamp a whole gun to look completely different from their lineup. But back to the frame, if you're looking at the rear of the beaver tail here, it is rounded off differently than the X-five Legion that you see here. The X-five has more of a point. This is more rounded off and reminiscent of the Elite version, or I think there's another version that kind of has that lip that curves up like that. I forget the name of it, but it is very reminiscent of the 226 line, or the 229. Right? It is a very nice, comfortable grip. And again, with those textured G10 side panels, I did not have any type of slipping issues with this whatsoever. Now lastly, guys, I'm going to go ahead and put them on a scale for you and compare the 226 to this guy here, and then to the X-five Legion, so that way you can get a definite weight difference between all three of those. I'll even throw in the Elite and the 229, just so that way you can see the variety of it, right? Since I have them on the table, why not? Now guys, I think I pretty much went over all the details on this firearm. Reliability wise, I did go out and shoot around 550 to 600 rounds. I went maybe a tad bit over than what I usually do, but within those 550 rounds or so, I did not have any issues with this firearm whatsoever. It ran perfectly fine. So overall, guys, I think this is a great shooter. Me personally, from the collection that I have, the Legion X-five was the softer, less snappy, or smoothest shooting gun that I would call it in my SIG collection. But ever since I got this one, this is definitely smoother and softer shooting. And I don't know what terms to use, guys, when it comes to a gun that doesn't have a lot of flip or recoil or perceived recoil, whatever the hell you want to call it, guys. It is a better shooting, flatter gun than the other ones that I own now. But I don't own this one technically. I still have to decide if I'm going to buy it. And I think I am after my 1,000 round or more testing that I do with it. But is it the right firearm for you? Regardless of whatever gun I have here on the table or whatever gun you're looking at, you're never going to buy a gun and expect it to make you better or a better shooter. I know I say that a lot, but for a person to become a better shooter. They have to train, they have to dry fire. I'm a huge advocate on dry firing because, like I always say, I have 3 kids, I can't get out much, and I dry fire a ton, and that's what keeps me familiar whenever I go out and shoot these guns. So 100% you need to be focused on training and taking classes and dry firing your heart out. But if you do all that already, then why not give this guy a look? Why not give any of these guns on the table a look, and go from there and decide for yourself if this is a good shooter. Don't take my word for things, guys. You go out and you shoot these yourself. You do your research and you formulate your opinion based off of what you figured out on your own. But overall, I personally think this is the softer shooting SIG out of the lineup thus far from the factory. And I say from the factory because some guys have some Gucci'd out SIGs with compensators and stuff like that that I've seen shoot super flat. So, but from the factory, this is a extremely flat shooting gun. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this little overview or review or whatever you want to call it. And I appreciate you all for subscribing to my channel. We are growing like wildfire, and hopefully it's going to keep growing because of you guys. I wouldn't be doing the stuff that I'm doing because it'll just be me talking in front of a camera to no one. So this is why I keep doing it, for you guys, and the fact that I get to shoot some cool guns and own some cool guns to show you guys and shed light on some cool stuff in the industry. But thank you guys so much. I appreciate you all. Love you all. Catch you in the next one.